many of us face immense challenges in our lives. I want to uncover secrets and principles to building a life filled with purpose, not weighed down by hardship. I'm Kirsty, your host in this journey. Each episode, I'll be talking to different people, sharing their stories and practical steps to help us to design a life that we love. Every single life has a meaning and a purpose. I had an accident. It was something, a freak accident. I had neurologists, I had orthopedic surgeons, I had the head of the infectious diseases unit, I had podiatrists, there was 8 of them, and for the next year and a half, they worked with me to get me back on my feet. Following on from that, I actually had a heart attack. I was in and out of hospital then for the next 2 years. So you can overcome anything. And what I really believe it was when I surrendered.
So welcome back to the podcast. Today I have got Sharon Muscet with me. So Sharon, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be on. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. So for our listeners, Sharon is an amazing lady. She has so much love and joy in her life. She is somebody else who I connect with because she's also got a bit of an obsession with death, which sounds really negative, but it's because we're so passionate about life. And Sharon, you've actually had 4 brushes with death. Is that right?
Yes, I have. Throughout my short lifetime, I have.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself. You're based in Adelaide in Australia. Tell us a bit about your life today and then we'll jump straight into your journey up to this point.
Sure. So I am a mum of 2 boys. You can see their little pictures behind me. They are the absolute loves of my life. I'm a single mum living in Adelaide, like you said. I have had a varied career to date, and at the moment I'm, first and foremost, I look after my boys. I am also a professional speaker, and I run a social marketing business, an online business.
So Sharon, you've had 4 brushes with death. Are you happy to share some of those with us?
Yes, absolutely. So my first brush with death happened when I was 4 years old. I grew up in a country town 2 hours out of Adelaide, and I was on a tractor, in the bucket of a tractor with my twin brother, and Dad was being a bit silly, I suppose, and he'd lift the bucket up and down, and we'd say, "Do it again, Dad, do it again." And one time the bucket was up, and he actually went over a little bump, and a little 4-year-old body, went pop out of the tractor onto the ground. And Dad didn't see me because I was above the tractor, and he kept driving. And it was my twin brother that saved me by getting my dad's attention and waving his arms. And Dad stopped and said, "What do you want?" He said, "Sharon's on the ground." And it was within an inch of running me over. I would have died.
Oh, my goodness. Can you remember that?
Yeah, I was really frightened. And it was one of those moments when I was on the ground and actually too frightened to even move. Like I could see what was going to happen. I was too frightened to move.
Yeah.
So it was like my mum, she was so angry with my dad.
I'm not surprised.
I'll never forget the roasting my dad received.
Oh, but your poor dad as well. He must have been pretty shaken up by that.
He felt terrible. Awful. Yeah. And it's one of those that we don't really talk about it because he was very traumatized by that.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, so full on.
My second time was when I was 10. I had acute appendicitis. My mum kept me home from school for about 4 weeks with what we thought was a tummy ache and, vomiting. And I eventually became so sick that they raced me up to Adelaide Hospital, where I stayed for the next 6 months in hospital.
6 months?
Yeah. By the time they got me to Adelaide, I remember having lumps appearing all over my stomach. So they were these abscesses that were forming, and blood poisoning was setting in. I was really ill.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so as a 10-year-old, back then, my father was on the farm. It happened right in the middle of harvesting. My mum had to return back to help Dad with the harvesting and 3 other young children. And so I was on my own 6 months as a 10-year-old. And that was
for me, very, very difficult time. And I believe that really shaped a lot of who I became. You know, for me, it was very much about survival. Yeah. I was a very shy person back then, didn't have a lot of confidence to speak out, and I was very frightened. I was frightened about, one, what was happening within my body and being prodded and poked all the time.
Yeah.
Also being alone. And, you know, as a 10-year-old, I felt I didn't really understand the concept of why I was left alone. So it had a big impact on my life.
Oh, I'm sure it did, because that's an age where, you know, you're coming up to being a teenager as well. And how did that affect your friendships, but also your relationship with your family?
Look, it was, my twin brother and I have an incredible connection, and we still do. He's my best friend. And
cool.
That was really tough for him and I. We'd never spent time apart ever. And to have that, so it was more him that I pined for than anybody, which is interesting. But yeah, you know, and even my school friends, you know, they would send me, like, they would do class exercises and send me booklets and get well messages and things like that. I felt really alone and isolated. So, you know, with my mum and dad, I suppose I understand now why, but at the time I didn't understand why I was left on my own. Like, I remember having a lot of internal thoughts about that. You know, my youngest son is 10, and I look at him and go, I cannot imagine you being on your own without a parent for 10 months, going through surgery and going through all of these things.
Yeah.
Like, occasionally I'd see my mum, but not very often.
Yeah, because she had to go back to do the work and look after the other kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Did you feel a little bit abandoned?
Yeah, very much.
Unloved and shoved aside?
There was all of that going on in my head. And I remember coming back home, and I used to share a room with my sister, and my sister and I were, you know, we were never really close, not as close as what I was with my twin brother and my younger brother. And we had this argument when I came back, because all of a sudden, you know, we were sharing a room again, and I was invading her space that she'd
gotten so used to it.
Months. And she said to me, and this was really my first thoughts around death, I suppose, where I really felt something. She said to me, I wish you died and you never came back. I mean, it was in an argument, and she was 13. And
gosh, how did you feel?
I felt, I remember my mum's reaction. My mum got really cross with her, and, you know, she yelled at her, don't you ever say that to her. And I realised at that moment, that was kind of when I realised how close really I was to death, because I saw my mum's reaction to it and what it had, you know, how it had affected my mum, how close I had come. And so that really cemented something in my head then about, wow, how fragile life is. Like, I think as a 4-year-old, when that happened, it didn't have the same, you know, with the tractor, it didn't have the same impact as this one.
Yeah.
And when I heard those words from my sister, that actually had a massive impact. And then my mum's response.
Yeah, wow.
And so that's really where I thought, you know, life is so fragile. Like, you know, we can actually go at any time.
We absolutely can. Like, at the blink of an eye, we can be gone. How does that influence how you live now, or how you lived following that 6 months?
I think following that, I mean, I became very independent at that time and very strong. I learned about strength, and so I was never really close with my mum or my sister from that moment on, particularly. I think because of my strength, like, I developed this massive strength of character. I also became a real protector of my brothers, my twin brother and my younger brother, you know, so... Yeah, it was like I became, I really changed as a person, I think, and became someone that wanted to protect them if they were ever in danger, or if they were ever involved in a fight at school. I was always to the rescue. So I became a bit of a rescuer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because maybe you no longer feared the consequences? You know, you've been so close to death, that's the worst that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt almost a little bit invincible at that stage. That, well, it wasn't. It was like a I don't really care kind of attitude. Like, you know, I've got this, and you know, and I suppose being away from people for so long, I felt a little bit isolated. So, my brothers were, and my twin was the closest thing I had, really, which is how I internalized that.
Yeah.
So I did everything to protect him. And he used to find me highly embarrassing. If he was, there was one day we were on the boys at school, they used to go down the oval and do these sort of like play wrestling fight things. And, I went down one day, I walked around the corner and I saw my brother underneath, someone else that was wrestling him. And I actually ran onto that oval and pulled this big man off my brother. And was ready to fight him, like, get off my brother.
Oh, really? And your brother's probably just going, oh, leave me alone. I just want to wrestle, want to play.
Leave me alone. And I'm
How embarrassing.
You're embarrassing me.
Oh,
like no one could touch him. No one could touch him.
But it sounds like nobody could touch you either, that you were so independent, you had such inner strength and you just got on with things. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So how did that play out going through your teenage years? And
I remember one day Mum saying to me, why is it that I can't get close to you? Why don't you let me in? Why don't you tell me about your boyfriends, or why don't you tell me about what's going on? And, so I don't know, I just became someone that just started to internalize things. I suppose having that time on my own, I just sort of realised that I could just do it on my own. So that's something that I work on. And, Mum and I have come a long way since then, but it's really only since I've become a mother myself and really understood things from her standing, how it must have been for her, and also how it must have been for her to have not been with her daughter.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I was looking at it from mine, but now for me to know, like, if that was one of my children and I could not physically be with them, like, she was completely torn.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's been really healing, but it really didn't happen until I became a mum myself.
Yeah. Was that something that you always wanted to do? You always wanted to have your own kids and be a mum and kind of replace something that happened when you were younger?
Do you know what? No. I saw myself as, I went very much into the corporate world. I travelled the world with my job. I was a PR and marketing executive. So again, it was probably that real strong, independent person that I could take on the world. And so kids weren't really in my radar, to be honest. And I kind of, we grew up very traditionally on a farm with traditional values of you get married, you go to school, you get married, you have kids. That's kind of how we were brought up. But me, I suppose, became a little bit, I wouldn't say I was a rebel because I was actually a really good kid. I was just very independent. I thought, no, I'm not doing it that way. So I wanted to do it my way. I call myself the white sheep of the family. I don't call myself a black sheep. I'm a white sheep. And so, so I wanted to do it my way, which is probably a bit frustrating for my mum and dad at times. Yeah, so I followed a corporate career. I travelled the world with this company. I absolutely loved what I did. They were a worldwide company. I looked after all the PR and marketing for these worldwide events like Wimbledon, Rugby World Cup, British Open Golf, major golfing events around the world. Went to New Zealand for some of their major golfing events, cycling events. So I was kind of the go-to PR girl for all of these and loved it. Loved it. Yeah.
And then what happened?
So that was my dream job I was doing. I was a single girl. I was a workaholic. Looking back, I was a workaholic. I worked probably 60 plus hours a week.
Did you know at the time that you were a workaholic?
No. I didn't realise at the time that I was caught on a corporate merry-go-round that I didn't know how to get off. And when I actually took this job overseas, because I was doing this job from Adelaide but travelling all the time, so Adelaide was my base. Then I received a promotion and I took it over in the UK. So I was based out of their London office, but I looked after the European countries and the UK so I was there. And it was interesting because when I actually got there and I thought, wow, this is like, I've made it, like this is it. I'd signed a contract that I was going to be in the UK for 3 years, and then I'd have to return to Sydney after 3 years for the next 8 years. So for me, having children was out.
So you'd committed 11 years?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, I get over to London, and within 4 weeks I wanted to come home. It wasn't anything like I wanted.
Oh, no.
I was desperately homesick, and I thought, you know what, everything I ever wanted was right in front of me, and I never saw it. The blue sky, the green grass, the beautiful weather, but my family were there, my friends, and I just left everyone. I didn't know anyone in the UK, and I got over there and went, what have I just done, and what have I committed to? And in my contract, if I broke my contract, the 3 years over there or then the 8 years in Sydney, I owed my company about $60,000 in relocation costs.
Oh, my goodness. So
what
did
I was
you do?
locked in. So I remember one day I went for a walk. I get very homesick on a Sunday, and I went for a walk in London. And I thought, oh, my God, how long am I here for? Like, I the tears just wouldn't stop. And I was just like, I'm just so sad. And what am I going to do? And this voice, and it was a booming voice, came into my ear. I was in a shop. I'll never forget it. I was looking at hats. And this booming voice came in my ear and said, 6 months. And I, looked around, and there was no one there. So I can't explain what that voice was, but it was very loud and very clear, and it said 6 months. And I said to myself, well, that's not true because I'm here for 3 years. I'm locked in.
Yeah.
Anyway, I kind of forgot about that little episode. And
wait, you had a voice booming in your ear while you're looking at hats, and you forgot about that?
Well, I just went, I'm locked in. Like, I don't know what that was. I don't know what you're talking about, who you were. I have heard that voice once before in my life.
Really?
So I know.
The same voice?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it's guidance. So that's how I choose to look at it.
Yeah.
So, but I at that time thought, well, that's ridiculous because I am locked in to a contract and but desperately unhappy. So what happened for me, so this is where fate, I suppose, took its course. And I had an accident. It was something, a freak accident. So 3 months into being in London, I was back in Australia on a junket trip with our 20 top distributors from around the world. My boss and I had brought them back into Australia, and we were starting in Adelaide on a 2-week trip. We're going to take them to the Sydney Opera House and over to Sydney, and I work for a wine company, so we'll take him up to the Hunter Valley, and then we'll take him, in South Australia to the Barossa Valley. We're taking them all over Australia. I come in my first day, and the weather was beautiful, and I hadn't seen beautiful weather since I got to London. So I thought, I'm going to go for it. And I was staying down at Glenelg, which is a really popular destination in Adelaide, beautiful beaches. And that's where we were staying, and my hotel was right in front of the beach. So I thought, I'm going to go for a walk on the beach and go in the water and splash around, and I did. And I had a freak accident, and I stepped on the tail of a stingray. There was a stingray hidden under the sand. And as I took a step, because I was sort of being a bit silly and I was sticking my legs up and out of the water, and I took a step and I saw this stingray shoot from, it was under the sands. It was a smallish one, about that big.
Yeah.
And the tail flicked up. That's its defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It flicked its tail up. And as I took a step, because my legs were sort of out of the water, it went, and it was razor sharp, and it went through the bottom of my foot, just sort of straight through the bottom. And my life changed forever.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
From that moment on. So now this, for those of you, if you remember Steve Irwin, he was a crocodile hunter.
Exactly what I thought of straight away.
So my accident happened 2 years prior to his fatal accident.
Yeah.
So, and his obviously went through the heart, and he died instantly. So, it's the barbs in there, there's these minute, millions and millions of minute little hair-like follicles, and they are filled with toxins. So that went through the bottom of my foot. And so from that moment on, I was off my feet. I did not work again. I did not work in corporate again. I had to relinquish my role. I actually did, when that happened, I did hobble around for the next 2 weeks because I'm a workaholic, remember? So I'm like, no, went to the doctor, patch me up. It really hurt. And for 2 weeks I was on strong antibiotics and in a lot of pain, but hey, I was still working. Did everything I should not have done, which was on my feet. Then I went back to the doctor after 2 weeks before I flew back to London, and my doctor said, I don't think you should be getting on a plane. I'm like, no, I'll be right. Just give me another course of antibiotics. I'll be right. And I arrived back into London. Within a day, my foot blew up like a balloon. And I was in and out of hospital then for the next 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. So I was off my feet for 2 years. I had, in that time, 10 operations fighting to save the use of my foot. They were talking about amputation of my foot. I had 2 brushes with death in that time. It was horrific. If you can imagine 1 week in bed, you imagine 2 years in bed. And from someone that was a workaholic, my whole world changed.
Wow. So you had
forever.
You had all these toxins in your body. Was that the main problem? It got into your blood, did you say?
Well, what happened, it got into my blood. I had a permanent PICC line in my arm that was feeding me antibiotics 24/7 because of the toxins. Now, I remained over in London for 3 months. So guess what? I came back within 6 months. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was over there for 3 months. I had 3 lots of surgery. I was under the care of a professor over there who they don't know how to really deal with marine life. So they were, I was in sort of like a vascular surgery kind of unit, and they really didn't know. So after the 3rd time, it was like an exploratory surgery. They just kind of kept cutting away, trying to get at where these toxins were in the foot. Because the foot would not heal. As soon as my foot hit the ground, boom, it would flare up and I'd get really sick again. So they got me back over to Australia, and it turned out that my professor in London studied at Harvard Uni with a man that headed a clinic here in Adelaide, and it was called the Foot Clinic. So he contacted him overnight and said, we've got this case with this girl. We don't know what to do with her. The next thing is amputation. My last surgery in London, signed a form. I cannot believe I did it, to allow them to start cutting off my toes and my foot. And I remember waking up from that surgery and all I saw was my foot bandaged up.
And you didn't know whether it was there or not.
Hysterical. Yeah, hysterical. And the nurses couldn't calm me down. They had to call the professor, and he said, Sharon, we didn't do it. And I'm like, yes, you did. You've cut off my foot. You've cut it. And he goes, no, we haven't. We didn't do it. We wanted to bring you out, tell you what had happened, but we actually think you need to go back home to Australia. You need your family. Because remember, I'm single.
Yeah.
Had no support around me. I lived in a home with 3 other people, a beautiful home in Putney, but for me to get to my bedroom, to the kitchen, was 5 flights of stairs.
Oh, no way. You can't do that.
No, I would climb down on my bottom and climb back up on my, that's how tragic, things were just going from bad to worse. So my professor said, no, I think you need a second opinion. We're going to get you back to Australia and you need to be around family, because we're not going to start cutting anything without support around you. So, thank God. I can't believe that I had signed a form for them to do it. So fate probably, stepped in its way then. So I arrived back to Australia, and at that time went straight to this foot clinic. There was a team of 8 doctors. This was a brand new clinic that had just started in the Royal Adelaide Hospital, which is an extraordinary hospital here in Adelaide. Mm-hmm. And I had neurologists, I had orthopaedic surgeons, I had the head of the infectious diseases unit, I had podiatrists, there was 8 of them, and for the next year and a half they worked with me to get me back on my feet.
On your feet, literally.
Literally. Yeah. And without the team of those 8 people, it took a lot of effort. I'm so grateful to these people because they really cared for me and they did not want to see me lose my foot. And they got me back on my feet. And the first thing they said to me when I arrived, and they were all in this room, I'm devastated. And first thing I was like, how long till I get back? Because, I've got a contract. I've got to get back to London.
Yeah.
And they said, Sharon, you're here and off your feet in hospital for at least 18 months.
18 months.
Yeah, you're not moving. Or we will let you go home, but you have to have care and you can't move. So throughout those 2 years, I had 10 operations. And some of the operations towards the end was reconstructive surgery because I ended up getting osteomyelitis in my foot, which is a infection of the bone. Like the infection went so deep. So my foot is actually filled with some plates and screws. I have extensive nerve damage, hence why they had the neurologist there. So I do have a permanent partial disability of my left foot. I can't actually feel a lot of my foot.
Can you walk okay?
I can walk okay. I think if someone really looked closely, they can see a limp, slight limp. I work, a lot at, with muscle strength and because, my muscles all depleted. You imagine being off your feet for 2 years, all of my muscles in my left side completely depleted. Yeah, I lost my calf muscles, everything. So I had to rebuild all of that over time. And really, my doctors told me I would never be able to run again. Running was my thing, right? When I grew up in the country, I loved running and I was a fast runner. And the one thing I felt was taken away from me. My doctor said, you'll never run again, and you can't because your foot is too damaged. And I'm someone that you can't tell me what not to do. So
yeah, I can hear that coming through very clearly.
So about 5 months ago, I started running. Like I actually conquered about 6 months ago. There's a beautiful climb here in Adelaide called Mount Lofty Climb, and it's just very steep but beautiful views when you get to the top. And I actually conquered that. That was one of my things that I really wanted to do.
Yeah,
and so over time. Because we're talking now, this was 14 years ago, so it's taken me this long to really fully get my strength back in my body, like through going to the gym and lots of walking and whatever. And then I conquered that climb, and I was just like, it was one of the happiest moments of my life because I never thought I'd ever be able to do that. So for me, that climb meant everything. It showed me where I've got to now in 14 years. And then I thought, well, if I can do that, I'm going to start jogging and running. And I didn't tell because I'm still under the care of my orthopaedic surgeon and podiatrist and infectious diseases doctor, and I didn't tell them that I started running, but they kind of worked it out because my foot started, all my toenails started going black, and they were like,
oh, really?
Yeah, so I actually stopped it. So I did run. I managed to run 5 kilometres over about 8 weeks and I was loving it, and then went, you've done it now and now you need to stop.
Yeah.
Don't be so silly.
Oh, wow. I've got so many questions. Your story is fascinating. It's amazing. Where do you get this belief from? Where do you get it from that you can, they're telling you you're never going to walk again. And a few years later, you're running up a mountain and you're going for 5K runs and, your toes are literally turning black. Yeah. Where do you get that determination from that makes you think, I'm going to push some boundaries, or don't tell me what I can't do?
Yeah. So I suppose... if I think back to the timing of it, so I mentioned to you I'd heard this voice, right?
Yeah.
And it was the second time I'd heard that voice. So the first time I ever heard that voice was when I was 10. Now, this actually was just before my appendicitis attack. So I was a fast runner, loved running, all of this.
Yeah.
I used to be in all these race meets, right? And always came first. 100 metres was my thing. Like, I was so fast. Yeah. But what happened was I started growing, and I'm actually quite a tall person now. I'm 5'10.5". So at the age of around 10, I grew to almost my height of what you would see me now. And because of that, 10. Yeah, so like my poor twin brother didn't grow till he was 18. So there was like this, you can't even see it, this height difference for years between us, which is why I was probably his protector because I was so much bigger.
You're so tall.
But because I grew, all of a sudden my legs couldn't keep up with everyone else my same age. Like my legs I couldn't run very fast. So what happened at that time was I developed this really bad negative self-talk, that I wasn't fast enough anymore, I wasn't good enough, wasn't strong enough, anything like that. Now, I remember one day going to a race meet and this negative self-talk, Sharon, you're not good, you're not going to win today, you're not very fast, just this stuff went through my mind. And all of a sudden I heard the booming voice over the right shoulder again, or this was the first time, and it said, Sharon, believe. So they're just like short words, but it's boom. Wow. And I looked around. Now I was frightened and thought, oh my God, and there was no one there. But it was like this whole electrical current went all through my body. Yeah. I cannot even begin to tell you. And something clicked in me and I went, Sharon, believe. And something about that changed me. And I went, Sharon, believe. Sharon, you're the fittest, you're the tallest, you're the strongest. You can win this. Sharon, believe. Sharon, believe. And, and so long story short, I went and did that 100 metres. I was walking there when this happened and I won the 100 metres.
Oh, cool.
So I had this concept and I went, oh my God. And I went up to my coach and said, and he's like, fantastic job. And I said, I want to do the 200 metres. He's going, you've never won a you've never run a 200 metres. Like you're a sprinter. And I'm like, no, I want to do that. I did it and I won it because I had this thing, believe. So and then I did the 400. I said to him, I want to do that. And he's like, you know what? Do it. You're on fire today, girlfriend. And I won the 400 metre.
Oh, wow.
Never. And I remember after that, I got my medals, I was standing on a podium, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I have a secret that nobody else knows. And this is my secret. I'm not going to share it with anybody because I know how to win races now. And it's this concept of believe. But I also worked out if I had to believe it, but I had to run with all my might. And if I did the action, it was going to work. So from that moment is when my concept of believe in myself happens. So I started to apply that in lots of things. So, after I got back from my hospital stint, because I was quite a sporty person and I was taller than everyone else at that stage. So, I got picked for the state netball or SAPSARS netball side, volleyball. Like if I put my mind to something and said, I'm going to do that, I would generally always do it. Because I had this concept, Sharon, believe, you can do it, get the work. So, that has actually carried through for my whole life, that anything I put my mind to, like that job that I got overseas, I absolutely believed 100% I could do that. I worked in a male-dominated industry. No other females were in the type of role that I was in. It was the liquor industry, but I believed in me and I believed what I could do and I believed I could get that job. And so that's really where, I had this unwavering belief that whatever I can put my mind to, I can turn it into gold. I developed that when I was quite young. Yeah, so, in that 2 years with my accident, that was very trying for me. And my doctor said to me, they were amazed that I wasn't on antidepressants or, it took a lot of work and self-belief to keep me positive. It was all about mindset, despite having, 2 years. And I had setback after setback after setback. One of the operations, I developed a blood clot, and that actually almost killed me. I remember at that moment, because I was having a lot of fear around this amputation. So that was one thing that was really a barrier for me and getting myself healed. I had so much fear about losing my foot. How was I going to look? How was I going to walk? I'd never be able to run again. Everything was just eating at me. So, and as soon as I'd have an operation and I'd rest and 8 weeks later putting my foot back on the ground, boom, it would flare up again. And then they're talking amputation again. And, it was like this cycle, right, that just kept happening. So, my self-belief was at you know, like I was trying to work it, like, and, you know, I was doing personal development, mindset work, visualization. I was doing anything, meditation, to get myself feeling mentally strong, because I started working out that it was all, if I wasn't mentally strong, my body was just breaking down. It was, you know, so I was very much aware that I had to be on top of my game. After my blood clot was the moment where I actually just surrendered. Like, I got that blood clot. I was so scared. I was in so much pain. They called in my infectious diseases doctor from holidays, and he said to me, Sharon, this is serious. You've got a pulmonary embolism in my lung. This could kill you. So I'd had surgery. I'd been off my feet. They believe there was a clot in my leg that had moved up to my lung. And I lost it. And this was the only time that my doctors ever saw me completely break down, because I was like this little toughie through the whole thing. But, I became very vulnerable. I showed my fear. And I said to him, I don't care anymore. I don't even care. Just get me out of hospital. I'm sick of being here. I want to go home. And if I die at home, I don't care. And he's like looking at me like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I've had it. I surrendered. Take my foot. Take it. I don't care anymore. Yeah. And he's like, you know, and he was really studying me going, what's happened here? And I'm like, I'm sick of being strong. Like, I'm sick of trying to fix this. Yeah. Can't do it anymore. Like, I give up.
Yeah.
And do you know, and they shifted me to a different hospital because I was very unhappy where I was, and that had a big part to play in it. Another story. But they shifted me into this beautiful place that had amazing energy and whatever. And do you know what? From then on, I started to heal. And my foot, just like that, healed. And what I really believe was, it was when I surrendered. Like, I held on so tight to fear and amputation and, you know, I was trying to stay positive. But the moment I let it all go and I went, I don't care, like, take it. I'm done. I'm not even worrying about this anymore. If I'm meant to be gone, I'm gone. If I'm meant to lose my foot, that's my journey. I'm done. And I healed. Like, my doctors could not believe it. They couldn't believe the progress.
Yeah.
But they also saw the difference in me. I suddenly let go and just went, So amazing. That's the power, I believe, of mindset.
Of believing in yourself and believing in things.
Yeah.
So you've raised something really interesting here. I'm thinking, wow, go Sharon, on one hand, you're a real fighter. You're pushing through. You're determined. You're creating your future and not giving in to your circumstances. And then you're saying on the other side of that, when you surrender and you give in to your circumstances and you just be at one with what's going on, that all this goodness can come out. So at what point do we switch sides? Do you think there's a danger in being in the surrender phase too early?
Look, I look back and go, you know, I was holding on to what my life used to look like. Like, even though my doctors were saying, Sharon, there's no way you're going back to work, I was still getting people bringing in work, and I was working from a hospital bed.
Right.
And, you know, like, I was holding on so tight. And I really believe if I had surrendered earlier, I wouldn't have been off my feet for 2 years. I would have healed. Like, I didn't surrender to what was happening around me. I was too fixated on, this is how my life is, and this is how it's got to be, and this is what, you know, what's got to happen. And, you know, I'm a big believer now, I'm a completely different person in, my life's just changed completely since then. And that's because I have learned to actually have to let go now and not try and control everything in my life. So, you know, I believe more in the surrendering of the situation than trying to control the situation, because once I surrendered to it, then natural flow and natural healing took place for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you're saying there. Do you think there's times and situations in life where we do need to fight, where we do need to try and overcome what's going on for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely, in my situation, there had to be fight, because if there wasn't fight, I don't think I would have stayed in the mindset that I was in. Like, I was in a fight or flight. Like, I was in a survival, definitely in survival. Yeah, but then at some stage I had to surrender as well to the situation, because I knew there was no other way. Like, having a blood clot, and I just had to surrender that this could take, they had said to me, you need to ring your family to tell them that you could die, like prepare them for death, is what they told me. So at that moment, so there's fight up to a point, but then there's a point when you go, you know what, I've got to start listening now. And,
perhaps it's the surrendering to the things which you have no control over.
Yeah, I had no control.
Not surrendering to the things that you can potentially change or used for a better way.
Yeah, and I suppose that's when I finally surrendered, because the fight had happened right up until they said, serious, you can die. We need to prepare you. Like, is there anyone you want to call?
Wow.
So so that makes you think very, very hard about life and death and my situation. But it was interesting that when I did surrender, then I healed after that.
Yeah. Were you afraid of death?
I was at that stage. Yes, I was. And it was not until I then had another brush with death. So if you didn't think this story could get any worse, it did. Because I did, recover from the clot and that surgery. I was still not 100%. I was able to be back home shortly after that, though. I came down with shingles. Anyone that's had shingles knows that is absolutely debilitating. Like, that is so painful. And it was down the right side of my body. And following on, and that was from stress, I believe, from the clot, whatever. Following on from that, I actually had a heart attack. Believe it or not.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So my vital organs. What you have to realise is, because of the permanent PICC line in my arm, I was on some antibiotic drugs. My infectious diseases doctor was only one of two doctors in Australia that could administer this drug. It was so lethal. And they had to do daily blood tests. And this particular drug was very taxing on my liver and my heart, so much so with my liver that it turned the whites of my eyes orange.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like, I was really ill and my skin was terrible. And so my vital organs were under a lot of pressure. And so, so I actually one morning woke up and with excruciating pain. Actually, I'd had it all night through my chest, and it went up to my jaw. And I cannot even. I thought the blood clot was bad, but this was just horrendous. And it was after that I remember having a bit of an epiphany. Like, at the time, I was really frightened. I remember it was probably about a week after the heart attack, and I was thinking, you know what, Sharon, like, if I was meant to be gone, like, I've had 4 brushes of death now. If I was meant to be gone, I'd be gone. I'm not. I'm here. I'm here for a reason. And I no longer fear death, because I know I'm here for something. Like, I know I have not finished what I'm meant to do. And it was honestly like an epiphany. I remember where I was standing when that hit me. I remember everything about it. And after that, I was just like, I don't have any fear surrounding death.
So what do you have any idea what you're supposed to be doing with life? What is your mission?
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, my number one mission is also, as a mother, I feel I'm here to raise 2 extremely incredible young men. That is my first mission in life, and I believe I am doing that. But so at the time when, all of this stuff was going on in my life, I actually, I talk about right, I've got to do stuff that makes me feel really happy. And that was part of what helped with my mindset and keeping me positive. So I took up singing because I always wanted to sing. I'm not very good, but I thought I'd give it a go. Yeah. I took up knitting because I always wanted to knit myself a scarf. I did mosaics. I was doing anything. Remember, I was in bed most of the time, so I couldn't get out. But I also became a marriage celebrant.
Yeah.
So in amongst all of this time, I've probably not mentioned that I got married. So I met my then husband wearing a moon boot with a permanent PICC line in my arm and orange eyes.
Wow. Oh, that says a lot, right?
I know. Anyway, he was my knight in shining armour. He helped me through a very difficult time. And, and we then had children. And remember, I was never going to have kids. My whole life just changed. Like suddenly I met this man and we had our children and my life just completely changed. We actually eloped. We went to a beautiful place called Byron Bay in Australia. It's just like the most incredible place. And this lady married us. And I remember saying to Peter, like, if I could make someone feel like her, I would love that. So because I'm off my feet and, all of that, I actually studied to become a marriage celebrant. And so it took about 6 months. There's actually a lot of red tape to do that. And so part of my course, though, was to also, they offered whether you wanted to do funeral celebrancy work. And I thought, well, I'm not really interested in that. However, I'll do the course on grief counselling because I also do healings and Reiki for people. That's something else I taught myself during this time, which I love. And grief counselling would be really good for me to learn because you deal with a lot of people's trauma and, I understand more about my own trauma as well. So I went and had to interview someone, the state manager of a funeral home, three major funeral homes here in Adelaide or Australia. And before I knew it, he was interviewing me to become a funeral celebrant. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want to become a...
You've got this all wrong.
No, I don't want that. And he said, would you come back and do a mock funeral? Like he said, Sharon, there is a need for female celebrants in Adelaide, younger female celebrants. Would you be interested? And I went, oh, okay. And the thing was, it felt right. And remember, I've surrendered now to anything that's coming my way. So I went, okay, yeah, I'll come back and do a mock funeral. So the next week came back, stood up in front of him in the chapel, just him, did a mock funeral, and he said, oh, that was brilliant. He goes, I want to put you on our books. And so I became contracted to them. So within 6 months, I had done over 100 funerals with this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, these 3 companies. And I found my calling.
Really?
Like, after the first one that I did, I drove home and I thought, I don't know what just happened then, but I feel like I'm where I'm meant to be.
Wow.
And I remember ringing Peter at the time going, I can't even explain to you, but I feel like I know where I'm meant to be. So fast forward, that was 7 years ago when that first happened. I've done over 850 funerals now.
Wow.
I've worked with families grieving the death of a loved one. I've done funerals aging from newborns up to 102. I find that work my greatest privilege to work with them and to create an incredible service, and I call it a celebration of life. And so because of that, I really saw a need. So going in with all these families, what became very prevalent, only 3 of the 850 families were prepared. So a lot of these are older, people in their older years, but there was no wills. So I see what the effects of what can happen to people after. Either there's no wills or nothing's been prepared, nothing's been, like, no eulogies been done, there's no life story, nothing's been recorded. And, in all of this I learned, every single life has a meaning and a purpose. Like every single person's here for a reason. And I come in with the families and I'm a bit of an investigator and I look at what this life lesson was and what this life purpose was about and help the family with that. But I saw this need that people aren't recording their life stories and being prepared. So now, my role, with a professional speaker is about sharing there's a beautiful side to death. Death is nothing to be feared. So that ties in with my own personal experiences. But it's also sharing and my stories about me being a funeral celebrant and what I'm seeing to help other people see the importance in being prepared, not fearing death. If they're not fearing it, then they'll be more prepared for it. Then they, then they can leave history and culture for their generations to come, because that's what's getting lost is very much what I'm seeing. So that's become my new life's purpose and passion is the celebrancy work. I love that. And now sharing a message that I believe very strongly in.
That is so wonderful. Your whole story, it's really touched me, Sharon. I love how even you were talking about how you had 2 years in hospital where you're in and out of hospital and you can't do very much physically. So you trained your brain and you started to learn things and you took up knitting. Yeah. I mean, who, when they're completely immobile and having surgery after surgery after surgery, says, well, I've always quite fancied knitting, I'll go try that. And you said you did your mosaics, you did your singing lessons. I love your attitude of there's always something else, and how can we look outside of our box to see what else we can do to make life more fulfilling. I absolutely love it. What would be your greatest message that you have to share with the world today?
I think I have many messages. One of them would be my concept on believing in yourself. So you can overcome anything. Like, I have had more hurdles to jump over, more obstacles than most people I know at my age. But it's the concept of believing in me and believing in my capabilities, believing that everything that happens, there is a lesson in it. So I choose to see the positive in anything. Like my accident, people could have looked at that, or if that was, I could have looked at that and said, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. My accident was the best thing. That was a gift to me because it got me off a corporate merry-go-round. It brought me back to Australia and into Adelaide, which is what I wanted. It reconnected me with family and friends. And then it brought to me my husband, my then husband, and the two greatest gifts of my life, my children, which I would have never had. So I choose to look at it like that. And, and since then, my marriage did break down 18 months ago, and it's a devastating time for me. So, again, another hurdle that I did not see coming, but I choose to see. Well, I choose not to be, full victim to that. Like, I choose that there must be something else out there for me. I don't understand what, but since then is when my real passion for the beautiful side of death developed. So, again, I'm looking at, whilst this has been a devastating time for myself and my children, I'm choosing to move forward, and what will be will be. So that's how I look at any obstacle that comes my way. There must be a lesson in that, and there must be a reason for that. I hold very strong faith, and faith that things do happen for a reason. And I believe all my brushes with death has led me to this point of sharing the beautiful side of death.
Yeah,
I believe that.
That is fantastic. Sharon, thank you so much. I am absolutely blown away by your story. It's just got another bit and another bit. Yeah. I don't know how many times I've thought during our conversation of, maybe you should make a movie about this.
I think I need to write a book about
absolutely.
my story.
Absolutely.
I really do. That is one of my other things. I do want to be a #1 best-selling author, and I have the belief that I'm going to do it.
With a story like that and belief like that, I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
But Sharon, thank you so much for coming on. This has been fantastic.
And
you're
welcome.
We wish you the best. I can't wait to hear what happens and hear the next chapter of your journey. It's just fabulous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
really
you, Sharon.
appreciate the time. I really do.
Thank you.
So if you've enjoyed this episode of the Let's Talk Life Design podcast, I would love your support to help me get these messages and conversations out there. It would mean a whole lot to me if you could either share the podcast with your friends and family, or if you could link to the podcast homepage over at letstalklifedesign.com. I really appreciate you joining me and your support as I talk to amazing guests on our show. My heart is really that I would be a channel for others to get their messages out there, to inspire our listeners to live their best life and to learn how to implement these life design principles. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll catch you soon, where we'll uncover more strategies and steps to designing that life that we love.